Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, to another Propagandacaster with me, your host Imperial Dane. Moving on here to the Oberkommando West openings. And as the extent Oberkommando West openings are just as much sort of determined by their capping orders than by what they get in the opening game. I mean, generally, if you use the aggression, the extent of basically just determine how aggressive do you play your Sturmpanies, how far ahead do you move them, or do you just use them to cap territory with? Because the more aggressively you play your Sturmpanies, the rest of sort of, I would say, the build order sort of changes. Like, you play pushing in right aggressive as your opponent rather than here, for example, just use secure territory. You consider you only want to go Kugelwagen to help secure territory, then as your Sturmpanies fight at the front line. You of course also want maybe some additional Sturmpanies for Volksgrenadiers. Of course, if you got fire Sturm, you'll usually go for at least another Sturmpanier squad. That's only having two, but that is otherwise a bit rarer still. Most Oberkommando players will generally just go for full Grenadiers and a whole bunch in there at some stage. But again, just depending on how you play those opening Sturmpaniers, the sort of opening build order can change a lot. Again, had he played a lot more aggressively, he definitely want a Kugelwagen to help secure territory in against his opponent. Because again, the Kugelwagen has a higher capping rate than other units in the game. So that of course sort of plays a role there. But always in most cases, it's just get a bunch of Volksgrenadiers up, put pressure on your opponent. Don't play too defensively a rule, and then generally after like a few units you go here for the Schwere Wehrmacht level. Most players will go for the battle group headquarters, go into a flak half track, go for some MG34s. That is very much sort of standard stuff right now in terms of openings for the Oberkommando West. MG34 maybe 2 into a flak half track, that way being able to lay down a lot of suppressive firepower, which can make it much harder for the allied opponent to use his infantry freely and sort of push them back. So that is a very solid opening in that way. There are some that go for mechanized regiment, they go for looks, maybe go for double looks. So those are incredible if they go for double looks, but that is overall still, even then, just mechanized regiment into single looks. Pretty rare, because you generally also go for the battle group headquarters because as your medics. I mean, just by going for this one, you just sort of get a lot of sort of what you really want, or just sort of put together in one spot, allowing you to also support any infantry builds using the medics, which of course serves you quite nicely there. So that's sort of really it. I mean, if you go for the looks, you're not going to go for MG34s, and depending what you're up against, you'll usually also go for a Kedem, but that's more of a response to what's going. For example, Universal Carriers, you go for a Kedem to respond to it. If your opponent is Soviets, they actually go for Scout Cars, you go for a Kedem to respond to that. In theory, a bunch of Sturmpanies can also do the trick, in some ways they're more expensive, but at the same time, they can sort of do better as infantry afterwards. So of course, the Kedem is sort of more suited for long-term vehicular play from the opponent. But overall, again, Oberkommando West openings are just as much a term not just by what they build, but how they just sort of use that opening Sturmpanier squad. Where they wield it, where they send it, really, I think, determines a lot. That's the Oberkommando West, at least personally. So, again, the more aggressive you play them, the more you sort of want to slightly adapt the rest of your build order to it. And for that matter, sort of where you send your units. But again, it's sort of a case for a slow one. You just go for a bunch of Volksgrenadiers, you don't bother for a Kugelwagen. If you go for an aggressive order, though, again, you need a Kugelwagen. And then depending on the rest of the situation, again, you'll usually go for battle group headquarters, medics, and a flak half track. MG34s are also really good. You can though skip the flak half track, and particularly go for double MG34s. Skipping the flak half track, rushing ahead for the Schwerpunkt headquarters can be a viable strategy. Though it does see less use. Again, a lot of players are just really fond of the flak half track because it can be tricky for your opponent to counter in certain circumstances. They'll have to force to go for the counters more specifically, and again, that can slow down other elements for their strategy. So it can have some advantages, and again, it can be really good if you get some good veterancy up for the flak half track. But there are just as many players who skip, I think, the flak half track, just go for a lot of machine guns and so on there. Light infantry guns can happen, but that also depends on the build order of your opponent, what he goes for. A lot of support weapons, you kind of want a light infantry gun. If he goes for a lot of infantry, like in this case, the light infantry gun will usually find itself less used. And of course, you do get an MG34. Generally, you want to play it aggressive to support your troops. Again, you're an aggressive faction. The MG34 works nicely in supporting aggressive pushes if utilized correctly. So that's also a thing worth keeping in mind there in terms of build orders and unit usage. Of course, laying down mines at critical junctures is also a pretty good thing to have going there as you sort of open up the game. So I think that sort of covers it overall for the Oberkommando West and their openings. What sort of to look out for, what to do, and sort of maybe some responses here and there as to what happens. But overall, Oberkommando West openings, I personally find, tend to work best when you are playing aggressively. I mean, you don't have to go so aggressively, you have to go for the Kugelwagen, namely. You want to try and sort of, exert your Sturmpanies in such a manner they can put some serious pressure on your opponent, pushing them back, and that way allows you to, gain an advantage there in the early game. And then again, going for MU34s also tends to be a sort of good investment. A pair of them can really do a lot to frustrate your opponent in the right places. So that is also, I think, very much worthwhile keeping in mind when you do your Oberkommando West openings. So this is Imperial Dane here saying thank you all for watching. Hope you enjoyed this little video. If you haven't, subscribe, like, share, comment on it. And if you like what I do, consider donating or pledging on Patreon. Links are in the video description. This is Imperial Dane saying cheers. Thank you for watching. Hope to see you all tomorrow for another video. Cheers.